Welcome to another episode of Modern Data Warehousing and Business Intelligence. My name is Leonard Mwangi, Principal Consultant with Amli Data. Today I wanted us to talk about modern data warehouse. What does it really mean? What's entailed around it? And all the stuff that goes into it so that we can get that full picture of business intelligence, especially in this day and age where we're talking about more of serverless environments. And what does that mean when you move your data to the cloud and what to expect. So if we look at the traditional data warehousing and what we used to do, we had a very structured environment where we knew exactly where our data was coming from. So if we look at it from this perspective here, from our sources, we had predefined transactional data, which is our OLTP data, and that's your day-to-day data. If you're updating your website, if you're updating your point of sale systems and that kind of data coming in. So it's pretty very defined data. We knew exactly what we were getting. And then of course, if you have your ERP and your CRM, customer relationship management database as well. So we knew exactly what to expect. And then we had a predefined, very well tuned ETL process where we imported our data on, let's say, nightly basis, weekly basis, depending on how often your data refreshed. And once we did that, we went ahead and did some transformation because that has always been part of our ETL process, where we changed data, we manipulated data to fit the realm of things that we want to put into our data warehouse. And then after that, we went in and put our data into the data warehouse. After that happened, then of course we had our analysis, and in this case, this was primarily driven by the IT department, where they were specifically required, or they were specifically requested to either create the reports for us, be the guardians of the data, and all that good stuff. And then after all that was said and done, we had our visualizations, whether with the SSRS, with QlikView, or any other visualization tool, Spotfire and such, and the data was available, and we could be able to visualize it. So looking at the traditional data warehouse platform, it was very well defined. We knew exactly what to expect, and we knew exactly what kind of reports to generate, hence making it pretty easy to consume. But as things grew, so the data warehouse kind of changed. So our data sources actually increased. We went from having just the predefined, very well organized data to now having to deal with unstructured data, semi-structured data, your XML files, your log files coming in from all kind of sources. Now we have different devices that are actually generating data, your wearables and such. So now trying to take that data that doesn't conform to your traditional RDBMS sources where you have your columns and rows, it became a little bit cumbersome for us to be able to report into it. And then the other thing that changed is the ETL process, because now this data is not predefined. So the way I actually process log file is not the same way that I'm going to be processing data that's coming from a CRM system. So the ETL became a lot more complex because now we're having to deal with different types of data, different structures and visual and formats, and then putting those into the data warehouse so that they can be consumable. And then the other thing that changed was also the duration of when we're getting that data. The data became available much more often. So rather than just generating that data at the end of the day, now we have the requirement to actually, we want to get this data as quickly as possible. If you look at it from, let's say, an instance where you have, you're trying to detect any fraudulent transactions within your system, then that data, it's not something that you have to wait for a minute because you want to be able to catch that as soon as possible. So the data volumes, the data timeline on when to analyze it, to ETL it, increased quite tremendously, which also complicated the way we did the ETL. And then our analysis became much more complex as well, because now we have all kind of people. We have our data sciences, we have our business intelligence analysts, we have our executives. They all want to dip their hands in the data so that they can actually be able to see what's really happening in the business. So the analysis increased quite a bit, and we ended up with a lot more people that want to be able to have access to the data. So controlling who has access to it became another complexity that was introduced by these volumes of data or the data changes that we ended up with. And then after that, the consumption itself also increased, because now you have people all the way to the mailroom that they actually want to be able to tell how they're doing from the volume of mail, how they're processing their data. So you have from the lowest level of any organization to the highest level, everyone is trying to be able to tell, be able to actualize what they're doing from day to day. And with the data, we can be able to answer those questions. So the questions that were being asked, they were all over the place. So the consumption, the analysis, the ETL process, they all became complex. And with that, when we had our previous structure where you had a specific person that was actually driving this, they became pretty sad. They started to cry, and they decided to just go ahead and let's go golfing, because this has gotten out of hand. So this is the structure of what really happened with the traditional business intelligence. The data changed a lot, the volume changed, our expectations for ETL changed, our analysis changed, our consumption changed, and the people that were expected to be keeping track of all this, it became a little bit too much for just a single person within an organization to be that report writer, that DBA, that data guardian, that data analyst, that ETL person. It became a little too much. So this is exactly what happened with the traditional business intelligence, and this is why now I kind of gave birth to the new modern data warehouse, so that we can be able now to manage this data in a more ideal way, or be able to manage it in a systematic way so that it can be useful to everyone. So from the architecture of modern data warehouse perspective, so we now have the ability to consume all this kind of data, the unstructured and semi-structured data coming from both internal, from the web, from all kind of sources. We are able to go ahead and get that data, and also data that's coming from your business intelligence application, not business intelligence, but your business and custom applications, internal, your line of business applications, so that we can be able to marry the two together and be able to tell what exactly is happening, and also be able to have a relationship between these two data sets, the data that's coming outside your organization, the data that's coming from your organization. And that's where the data ingestion comes into picture. In a serverless world, yes, you can still be able to do this in an on-prem server world, where the system still sits within your organization. But if you want this to go serverless, then we have from the Azure platform, we have the Data Factory, which is the process that we use to do the data ingestion process. And then once we do that data ingestion process, then we have to put that data somewhere, and usually we put that in a data lake. In this case here, I have it as Azure Blob Storage, which is the backend system on data lake, which we will cover here in a little bit. And then you have other options where you can take it a little bit further and introduce the Azure Databricks. This is to allow you to cleanse the data, be able to also do any preparation and training, and we'll cover this in just a few moments. Then you can actually also take your blob storage data and push it directly to the Synapse. And the Synapse, which is what I have there as Azure SQL Data Warehouse, Azure Analysis Services, that now becomes Azure Synapse. And we can do that with Polybase to be able to consume that data. And then from there, now we can be able to analyze that data through Power BI. So let's look at that in a little bit more in depth. So the first piece that we have here is the data ingestion. So the data ingestion process, we are getting our unstructured, semi-structured, unstructured data sources. That's our step one. And then we're able to ETL, ELT, which is either you're transforming data and loading it, or you're loading the data and transforming it. And the advantages of loading and transformation is because of cost, because now you don't have to do those iterations while data is in process. You can actually load your data to the destination and then transform it so that you're now working with the data that's already in the destination of where you want it to, rather than in transformation process or in the pipeline process. Then after that, we have our storage, and in this case for my storage I have Azure Data Lake, and you can be able to either store both raw and clean data. So in this case here I have it as raw, and then after that I use Polybase to actually go ahead and push the data to our Synapse, Azure Synapse. Analytics. That's the replacement of what we used to call Azure Data Warehouse, and it has a little bit more pieces that we'll actually cover in the future presentations here. Then from there, we have the training process where we can still be able to take the data from our Azure Data Lake and take it to our Azure Databricks. And you can use Databricks for so many other things, not just training and preparation with different notebooks, integration with Spark, integration with Scala. You can be able to actually go ahead and do your training as well as do data cleansing, and we'll also do a deep dive session on this as well, all these components here. Then once you get that training, then the synapse process is coming back and forth. This is now where you're actually integrating with your machine learning process, so that you can train the data. You can prep the data, and then you can train the data. And then once that's happened, then you can present it to either Power BI or any other visualization tool that you have that will allow us to be able to see the data as it occurs. Then beyond all that, Synapse still can access the cleansed data, which is coming directly from the Databricks. But again, you can still be able to use the step 4 there to access the data, so long as you have your data cleansing mechanism happening within your data lake. You don't have to go through Databricks for you to be able to do the cleansing process, but Databricks does allow us to do a better, more cleaner job. Then from the Synapse, we have our Power BI process, where we are creating our visualizations. And the good thing about coming from Synapse here is that now the data is cleansed, the data is structured. If you want to be able to define, let's say for instance, what we used to call data mats, where you can be able to define a specific department has specific to certain data and such, be able to provide permissions or security around data, then you can actually be able to do the same thing with the Synapse. And then once that happens, then you can go ahead and access now that data with your row level securities and such through your Power BI. And then beyond all that, we have the ability to also use Cosmos, the Cosmos structure here, this Cosmos DB, to be able to provide the web metrics as well as web APIs. So this data here that's coming from Azure Databricks, after it has been cleansed, after it has been structured to the way we want, then Cosmos DB accesses it, and then you can be able to use it with your mobile phone, with your mobile devices, with your web applications and such. So that's what I wanted us to do as part of the introduction. What we're gonna do now here next in these coming sessions is we're gonna deep dive on each of those structures. So we're gonna go through how do you really get your Azure Data Factory going? How do you structure your Azure Data Lake? How do you handle your Azure Databricks, the Synapse environments, the Power BI, the Cosmos? So we will actually do a deep dive on each of these pieces here to be able to show exactly this whole serverless platform and how it works from end to end. Thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.